What's up, guys? This is Stevan Micic, and I'm here with my dad, the wrestling guru, Steve Micic, and we're here today to talk about some core wrestling positions and wrestling moves for beginners to get really started in the sport of wrestling. I know a lot of you guys are out there, either are finding this channel from jiu-jitsu or from other effects or other sports, or you're young and trying to learn more about the sport of wrestling and how to get into it. So today we're going to talk about the basics and how to wrestle for a beginner, right? Like if you were a beginner and started into it. But before we get into it, guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn your notification bells on so we can keep making more content. Also, guys, we're almost at 10,000 subscribers. I want to thank you guys all for watching and following along on our journey. Make sure to subscribe if you want to keep seeing this kind of content, this world-class content. Really would appreciate it and love doing this, so I'm happy you guys are enjoying our channel. I hope that you are enjoying our channel.
Hey, I remember Stevan dropping him off at the little Ricky Larson Wrestling Club. It was Rick Larson Wrestling Club. It's a feeder program for Hanover Central. Stevan brought a little flyer home, right?
Yep.
It had these two little characters on it, like drawn out, and he kind of liked that. You know, it looked kind of exciting. We go to practice, and Nick Petrov was also the head coach for the high school. Obviously, that's the father of Paul Petrov. I didn't know anything about wrestling. Stevan didn't know anything about wrestling, so we were learning together. I sat there at practice and just watched. And what did we go over the first day of practice? For beginners.
Stance and motion was like the first thing that you do, and it's crazy because that's like the thing that I still do, that thing that everybody still does, is stance and motion. Being able to hold a stance is number one. Stance is the most important thing in wrestling. It's what built your whole foundation is built on, how you're going to be able to take shots, how you're going to be able to protect your legs and defend, how you're going to be able to hand fight and win your matches. You're not going to be able to get your hand raised if you don't have a good stance. It really boils down to that.
Number two, penetration step. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the other thing is like learning how to take a shot correctly. You know, I know we worked a lot as a youth to do kind of heel, toe, knee, step penetrations, and this just was a way learning how to take the penetration step properly. I know one thing that people get really nervous about, especially in the sport of wrestling, is kids, or they're like maybe jiu-jitsu guys, grappling guys, and trying to learn MMA, trying to learn wrestling, is they're nervous to be able to take a shot and using their head and their body positioning. But when you're in your stance, you're low, and learning how to penetrate properly on your knees to follow up and get your head up so you're not crashing into the guy's leg.
And I remember Stevan walking across the mat from one side to the other side, heel, toe, knee, head up.
Doing those kind of drills were very, very important, right?
Yeah, just to learn the proper penetration and all that.
Yep.
It's just starting at the basics. This is the basics. Once we got that down, we got the stance in a pretty good situation. Make sure you coaches out there and that, you know, overseeing these kids, make sure they're staying stable and they're not too high, they're not too low, and that they're strong in those stances. Make sure that heel, toe, knee step, that they can actually take a penetration step. Then you can move on teaching them some, number three, a shot. What shots are we working on here?
Really, the main shots that you have to learn to take is like a high crotch / double leg. That's the main penetration.
And basically, it was the double leg for you, learning the double leg.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes, learning the double leg to penetration and getting into two legs, or a high crotch, switch to a double. That's your key. That's your first move, and that's kind of the easiest way to really get down to learning your penetration step.
And that's a head outside shot versus the next shot that you're going to have to learn. And
that's the single leg. The single leg is a head inside penetration, but it's a little bit different because it's hard to get a head penetration in right away. So I think a high crotch or a double head outside single, some people call it, better right away than a head inside single, because it just locks in your penetration. It's a little more versatile for, like, if you are someone who's not just if you're a young kid, it's easy to get into, or a dad watching this to show their youth. But also, like, I think for like someone who's in MMA space or something, because these are probably better shots where you're able to penetrate, you get into high crotch double legs to lift the guy up and your head's high and better positioning.
Yeah, and I think what's really important here, everybody, is that's watching this today, and I remember Stevan for years would take a shot, and I didn't know anything, and coaches weren't really saying much, or we weren't listening, right?
Yep.
We got to get the head up. He would be down ankle biting, and you could put a penny on his forehead, he'd be pushing that penny across the mat. You know, penny pushers. And he'd be down there stuck on a leg, pushing.
It's a funny analogy.
How often do you see kids doing that? So I think one thing, if I was starting all over again, you know, we teach them to get to that shot, but how to get their head up, their back strong, and just build up right away.
Yeah, back strong, good positioning, head strong and high. I'm trying to get everything to your feet. That's the most important thing as a kid.
Teach them good positions in all these areas that we're talking about, and it'll go a far away.
The next thing is the head positioning. and blocking. I think learning how to use your head in position to head fight instead of just using your hands properly, because you're going to learn how to put a collar tie and grab the guy's arms, grab their wrists, underhook, whatever, all these wrestling moves. But if you can't learn how to keep positioning with your head and stay square with your opponent and try to win the head battle, where you're trying to get your head in the side of their neck or their ear and try to fight for that, it's really hard to learn how to move your body in unison.
And a good way to do that is you both put your hands behind your back
and you head fight like this.
And you try to get head position either to the ear or wherever and try to beat them. And that little exercise there is good for kids starting out, right?
Yep. It's very simple, very easy. I mean, it's fun. You kind of want to get into wrestling a little bit. When I was younger, you always want to keep wrestling, but this is like to go live. But it's pretty easy to just like, I think, to do this drill. I mean, listen, your kids, your back's gonna hurt. That's normal, and my back still hurts me sometimes. But I remember being a kid, just being like, wow, I have to really get through this pain to make my lower back strong, my glutes, my hips.
Before we move on, though, in between this, you can play some games too. Stevan loved these games, and he kept coming back for the games more than the wrestling sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Steal the bacon.
Yeah, there's a lot of different.
What? Give him a couple games he can play.
There's a lot of little wrestling games that like kids can play, especially more. This is obviously not for your guys coming into wrestling and learning, but this is for like youth. But games are really like way to think in general to get competitiveness, activeness, and learning how to use their body right. Like, you know, warming up by using certain tumbling. There's different games that kind of
they put a towel in the middle of the mat and then put the kids, line them up on both sides, a team and a team, and then you'd give them a number, like a number 1. You say 1, they all both run in, grab the towel, and try to jerk it out of the other one's hands and run it back to their side. And then you bring it back and you say number 3 and 4, so 2 guys would come out from both sides. There's a lot of creative things you can do to really make it fun and engage these kids into coming back for more, right? So let's get back to the wrestling.
Yeah, the next thing, I think, what is this, like the 4th or 5th point?
Yep.
I would say learning how to sprawl right, but you're using your head to block as not just head fighting for position, but using your head to down block, even from space. And I think one thing with kids is just learning how to be able to use your head and shoulders and not have that fear of, you know, everyone's so scared they want to keep their head away when they shoot or when they sprawl, but being able to use your head as a tool, just like as another limb, just like your arms and your legs, and learning to block right, down block right, and learning how to just get your legs back properly, using your head to do that. It's a pretty easy drill to do, learning down blocks and sprawls.
And I'd like to add to that, when you teach them early on, instead of like we did later on, is to where the head goes, the body goes, teach them to sprawl, but also to stuff the head or to push the head away. Teach them to really, not just sprawl, but also control that head and where it's at, stuffing it between them or stuffing it. What do you think about that?
Yeah. This is more of like, now instead of just like some like basic positions, like this is still a super basic thing, but like understanding the mechanics of wrestling, right? You have to, as an adult that's teaching kids or people trying to learn about wrestling from the beginning, wrestling something that there's position, just know like the fundamentals, the laws of science for wrestling, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't know this, it's going to be very difficult. And if you do know it, you can apply it as you get better. Yeah, if I'm on a leg and a guy's pushing my head away, it's hard to finish. Or if I have my hands locked and he breaks my hands away, it's very hard for me to take him down. There's little tricks like this, tricks of the trade we call, that really can help you learn wrestling basics.
Yeah, and it's kind of the opposite. If you're teaching them defensively to push the head away and get your hips down, offensively when you go to finish, you're going to want to do the opposite. You're going to want to get your head in really tight. He defensively is going to want to push my head away. So these are the little things you teach early on, these little concepts, and then they play with them and get used to them. All right, so we've got the stand-up, we got the stance, we got the penetration, we've got a shot, a high crotch with the head outside, a single leg with the head on the inside.
Yep.
And then one last position I'd like to talk about is, and have you talk about, is the front headlock. You kind of teach that basic early on.
Yeah, I think front headlock is really, really crucial on offense and defense. It's a position that there is some failure. Like, you're going to have to just learn how to like play there, just like you would have to in the sport of wrestling. You kind of have to be in the position. But I think front headlock is really important. But I even think what's more important than front headlock, Dad, would probably be just knowing, like, a kid how to not get pinned and knowing the dangers of pinning positions.
Well, that's what I was going to next, is the bottom position. Let's move on to that.
Well, front headlock would be included because there's a lot of positions that you can do, a gator roll or a pancake crusher. There's a lot of dangerous positions that can happen in a lot of places. And so wrestling, pinning at a young age is very common. common, but when you look at the highest level, it's very, very hard to pin somebody because you understand, you know your dangers. So learning how to bridge off your back and not get pinned properly, that is, you know, we don't think of that. Like, I don't think about that anymore, but you have to learn it. This is something, learning to bridge off your back and spend time there.
And also when you're in a front headlock, don't get chicken wing here where they can dig an underhook and now they catch you in a crusher or a bulldog. Get those things taken care of. Play around with those. Let's go top and bottom. Let's talk about those positions, Stevan.
Yeah.
How are most guys pinning people when they're on top?
Half Nelson, man. That is the one that takes out kids left and right. The beginners in the first year tournaments, they don't know how to use it and turn away. But
do you remember how you used to have to get your head up and turn away?
You used to have to get your head up, turn away when someone puts a half Nelson in, and bury it off. You know, learning super basic things. Knowing, like I said, these pinning positions that are super common, you got to stay out of it. You know, and on bottom, learning how to build your base, stay in a strong base, and learning just holding position before, or even getting into your stand-ups and your sit-outs in like folk-style wrestling. And the same thing even for freestyle, when little kids are learning, you know, parterre for gut wrenches and laces, just learning how to belly out right properly in base.
And then on top, what do you think? Learn how to put the half in when you're a little kid, just to learn how that feels, and also from an offensive standpoint, and learn how to control wrists too. Wouldn't you say on top, what would be the most important things you would be?
Yeah, really trying, I think, like chop and wrist, or trying to learn how to take a claw ride properly, or looking to put a half Nelson when they're on their belly. Like these positions, like, yeah, maybe you start improving, you get better, and you learn higher level techniques as you go. But like some of these moves are important and crucial to start doing at a young age for a reason, because not only is it just learning your body movement and learning how to properly learn position and feel, because wrestling is such a feel sport, and it's such a, you know, you can develop it easier at a younger age. So once you kind of learn how to do things properly, they're ingrained forever. So that's really the most important thing with it, is keep it basic, right?
Have fun with it. Make sure you're throwing games in there to really keep them, you know, whether at the end of practice, middle of practice, to keep their attention, number one, and also keep them coming back and for more, because this is one of the greatest sports. I think it's the greatest sport in the world. You know, if you get these little guys excited and keep them here without getting burned out, a lot better chance they're going to move on to do great things in their careers.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe again for some more world-class content, world champs, and everything we do, baby. Let's go.